At 0532 on October 3, 1986, Sergei Preminin feels the deck of submarine K-219 lurch beneath his boots. He is 20 years old, a machinist's mate in the Reactor division, stationed in Compartment 8, 680 miles northeast of Bermuda. The explosion rips through Missile Silo 6, tearing metal and ejecting a 14-meter ballistic missile into the Atlantic. Seawater floods Compartment 6. Brown nitrogen dioxide fumes spread through the ventilation system. The submarine surfaces on battery power, one reactor running hot, the automatic control rods jammed. Temperature gauges in the reactor compartment climb past 70 degrees Celsius. There is no backup coolant system. 4 graphite absorber rods are stuck halfway out of the core. The fission chain reaction continues. Preminin does not yet know he will die inside the compartment that houses those rods. K-219 is a 15-year-old Project 667A ballistic missile submarine. She carries 16 R-27U liquid fuel missiles and 2 VM-4 pressurized water reactors. She left the Gagievo Naval Base 30 days ago for a routine Cold War patrol. One missile tube has already been welded shut from a previous fuel leak. The crew knows the boat is aging. Maintenance windows have been cut short. Preminin is on his second year of service. Not an officer, not a specialist, just a junior machinist assigned to reactor division duties. This is a routine patrol, until it is not. At 0514, the crew in Compartment 4 discovers water dripping from the plug of Missile Tube 6. The seal has failed. Captain Igor Britanov orders an ascent to 46 meters and activates the silo drainage pump. Water and fuel vapor are a lethal combination. The R-27U uses nitrogen tetroxide oxidizer and unsymmetrical dimethylhydrazine fuel, both hypergolic. They ignite on contact with each other. The pump runs. The crew watches the gauges. The water keeps coming. No one knows whether the missile itself has been compromised. The clock is running. At 0532, brown nitrogen dioxide gas erupts from under the missile tube plug. The crew tries to seal the compartment. 6 minutes later, at 0538, the explosion tears through Silo 6. The missile is ejected into the Atlantic along with its warheads. 3 sailors in Compartment 6 die instantly. The blast ruptures bulkheads. Seawater floods in. Toxic orange fumes spread through the ventilation ducts. The submarine surfaces fully on battery power. Britanov orders all compartments sealed and distributes gas masks. The crew does not yet know the explosion has damaged the reactor control system. The submarine is on the surface, dead in the water. Seawater continues to flood Compartment 6. Toxic fumes are everywhere. Crew members in gas masks move through narrow corridors, sealing hatches and checking damage. In the reactor control station in Compartment 5, instruments show trouble. Coolant flow in the second reactor is dropping. Core temperature is climbing. The crew tries to trigger an automatic scram, emergency reactor shutdown. The control rods do not descend. The explosion has damaged the actuation mechanisms. The temperature gauges in Compartment 7, the reactor chamber, read 70 degrees Celsius and climbing. The fission chain reaction is still running. Instruments show coolant flow in the second reactor dropping below safe thresholds. Core temperature is rising toward meltdown. The automatic scram trigger has been damaged by expanding gases or heat from the explosion. 4 graphite absorber rods remain stuck in their channels halfway out of the reactor core. Graphite rods normally slide down to absorb neutrons and halt the fission chain reaction. When they are stuck out, the chain continues. Without coolant, the uranium fuel will overheat and breach the pressure hull. The reactor control officer, Lieutenant Nikolai Belikov, looks at the gauges. Remote commands are not moving the rods. The only option left is manual insertion. Graphite control rods are neutron absorbers. They do not undergo fission. When inserted fully into the reactor core, they capture neutrons that would otherwise split uranium atoms. This poisons the chain reaction and stops it. K-219's emergency protocol requires all 4 rods to seat simultaneously to guarantee the neutron multiplication factor drops below 1. Partial insertion is not enough. If even one rod remains unseated, neutron flux stays high, fission continues, coolant boils away, and the fuel overheats. The result is a steam explosion that breaches the pressure hull and releases fission products into the Atlantic. The rods must go all the way down. Compartment 7, the reactor chamber, is reading 70 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the steel channels that hold the control rods expand radially. The expansion is only fractions of a millimeter, but it is enough to create high static friction between the rod and the channel wall. The electric motors that normally drive the rods down cannot overcome this friction. The hand cranks can apply more torque, but each turn of the crank generates more frictional heat, which causes more expansion, which increases the jam. This is thermal positive feedback. The only way to break it is continuous manual force, turning the crank until the rod is fully seated and fission stops. Lieutenant Nikolai Belikov, the reactor control officer, volunteers to enter Compartment 7. He will manually force the rods down using the hand cranks. He needs an assistant. Sergei Preminin steps forward. He is 20 years old, enlisted, not an officer. He has no special training in reactor emergency procedures beyond the standard drills. But he knows the layout of Compartment 7, and he is strong. They will wear gas masks and anti-radiation coveralls. The coveralls are not designed for direct proximity to an active reactor core. They are designed for routine maintenance. This is not routine. Belikov and Preminin check their oxygen canisters, 2 each, and prepare to open the hatch. There are no powered tools in Compartment 7 that can apply the torque needed to force a jammed control rod down. The hand cranks are the backup. Each crank is a simple mechanical advantage device, a wheel and a threaded shaft. Turning the wheel rotates the shaft, which pushes the rod down into the core. Under normal conditions, this takes about 50 turns per rod. At 70 degrees Celsius, with thermal expansion jamming the channel, it may take more. Belikov and Preminin have no way to know how many turns each rod will require. They have no way to cool the compartment. They have limited oxygen. They open the hatch. Belikov and Preminin seal their gas masks and check the seal by exhaling hard. They open the hatch into Compartment 7. Heat rolls out like a wall. Visibility is near zero. The air shimmers. The metal deck is too hot to touch with bare hands. They step through and close the hatch behind them to limit contamination spread. The reactor is a gray steel cylinder in the center of the compartment, surrounded by piping and gauges. 4 hand crank assemblies are mounted on a platform around the core. They move to the first one. Belikov grips the wheel. Preminin braces him. They begin to turn. The first crank resists. Belikov leans into it. Preminin counts the turns aloud through the gas mask intercom. 10, 20, 30. The wheel fights them. Sweat soaks their coveralls. 40, 50. The wheel suddenly turns free. The rod has seated fully. They move to the second assembly. The temperature is climbing. Their oxygen gauges show reserves dropping. They begin again. This time it takes more turns. The friction is higher. The channel is expanding as the core heats. 60 turns. 70. The rod seats. They are breathing hard. 2 rods down. 2 to go. They reach the third crank. Belikov's movements are slower. Heat exhaustion is setting in. Core body temperature rises when the environment exceeds skin temperature. At 70 degrees Celsius, the body cannot shed heat through sweat. Sweat evaporates instantly and provides no cooling. Belikov turns the crank. Preminin counts. 80 turns. 90. The rod seats. Belikov staggers. His oxygen gauge is below reserve. Preminin grabs his arm and pulls him toward the hatch. They open it and stumble into Compartment 8. Belikov collapses. His core temperature is critically elevated. The ship's medic pulls him away from the hatch. 1 rod remains. Preminin looks at Belikov on the deck. He looks at the crew around him. He looks at the hatch. He knows the fourth rod is still out. He knows what that means. He takes the last 2 oxygen canisters from the rack, checks the seal on his gas mask, and steps back through the hatch into Compartment 7. He is alone. The heat is worse now. The reactor has been running without full neutron absorption for nearly an hour. He moves to the 4th crank assembly. He wraps both hands around the wheel. He begins to turn. In a pressurized water reactor, uranium fuel pellets are stacked in long tubes, called fuel rods. When a neutron strikes a uranium-235 nucleus, the nucleus splits, releasing energy as heat, and releasing 2 or 3 new neutrons. Those neutrons strike other uranium nuclei, splitting them in turn. This is a chain reaction. Water circulates around the fuel rods under high pressure, about 150 atmospheres, so it stays liquid even at 300 degrees Celsius. The water removes heat and carries it to steam generators. If coolant flow stops, the fuel rods overheat. If the chain reaction continues without coolant, the fuel melts and the reactor core fails. Graphite control rods absorb neutrons without undergoing fission. They are made of boron carbide or pure graphite, materials with high neutron capture cross-sections. When a control rod is inserted fully into the core, it captures neutrons that would otherwise continue the chain reaction. This lowers the neutron multiplication factor. If the factor drops below 1, each fission event produces fewer than 1 subsequent fission, and the chain reaction stops. K219's emergency protocol requires all 4 graphite rods on the second reactor to seat simultaneously. If even 1 rod remains out, the multiplication factor stays above 1, and the reaction continues. There is no margin for partial success. At 70 degrees Celsius, the steel channels holding the control rods expand. Steel's coefficient of thermal expansion is about 12 micrometers per meter per degree Celsius. A channel that is 4 meters long and starts at 20 degrees expands by roughly 2.4 millimeters in diameter when it reaches 70 degrees. That expansion creates radial pressure on the control rod. The static friction force is proportional to that pressure. The hand crank must apply enough torque to overcome this friction. Each turn generates more frictional heat, which causes more expansion, which increases the friction. The only way to break the cycle is continuous force, turn after turn until the rod is fully seated and the chain reaction stops. If the 4th rod remains unseated, the reactor's neutron multiplication factor stays above 1. Fission accelerates exponentially. Coolant flow is already compromised. The fuel rods heat past 1200 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, the zircaloy cladding that contains the uranium pellets fails. Fission products, cesium-137, strontium-90, iodine-131, are released into the coolant water. The water flashes to steam. Pressure spikes inside the reactor vessel. The pressure hull is designed for external sea pressure, not internal steam explosion. The hull ruptures. Fission products disperse into the Atlantic. The submarine sinks, carrying 119 crew, 34 nuclear warheads, and a radioactive plume into the Gulf Stream shipping lanes. This is what Preminin is preventing, 1 turn at a time. As Preminin works, Compartment 7 grows hotter than Compartment 8. Combustion gases and steam from the damaged coolant system raise the pressure inside Compartment 7. The hatch between the 2 compartments is roughly 1 meter in diameter. A pressure difference of just 1.5 atmospheres across that hatch creates a net force of about 12,000 newtons, roughly the weight of a small car, pressing the hatch closed. The hatch opens inward into Compartment 7. To open it from inside, Preminin would have to pull against that entire force by hand. No human can generate that much force. The longer he works, the hotter Compartment 7 gets, and the higher the pressure differential becomes. This is the second trap. He can stop the reactor, but he may not be able to leave. Preminin grips the 4th crank wheel with both hands. He turns. The resistance is higher than the first 3 rods. The channel is hotter now. He counts the turns in his head. 60, 70, 80. His oxygen gauge shows 10 minutes remaining. 90 turns. 100. The wheel is almost too hot to hold through the gloves. 110. The wheel suddenly rotates freely. He feels the detent click. The rod is fully seated. The reactor is shut down. Neutron flux drops to near zero. Core temperature will begin to fall. Preminin has stopped the chain reaction. He turns toward the hatch. Preminin grabs the hatch wheel and pulls. It rotates a quarter turn and then jams solid. He braces his boots against the bulkhead and pulls with his full body weight. The hatch shifts a centimeter and then reseals. He pulls again. Nothing. The pressure differential has locked it. He cannot generate enough force to overcome 12,000 newtons. Outside, crew members in Compartment 8 hear pounding on the steel. They grip the exterior wheel and pull together. The hatch shifts again, a few centimeters, and then slams shut as pressure equalizes momentarily before rising again. Preminin is trapped. Preminin's oxygen gauge reads 5 minutes remaining. He taps on the hatch with a wrench. 3 taps. Reactor secure. 2 taps. Hatch stuck. Outside, the crew hears the signal. They try again to pull the hatch open. It will not move. Nitrogen oxide fumes are seeping into Compartment 8. The crew is ordered to evacuate further aft to Compartments 9 and 10. They do not want to leave. The captain orders them again. They retreat. The tapping from inside Compartment 7 continues. Preminin is signaling. He is alive. The tapping grows weaker. Then it stops. Sergei Preminin dies of asphyxiation in Compartment 7. The oxygen in his canisters is exhausted. The air in the compartment is unbreathable. Nitrogen dioxide, steam, and carbon dioxide. His body is found later, after the submarine sinks, still in the compartment. The 4th control rod is locked in place beneath him. The reactor is cold. Neutron flux is 0. The chain reaction has stopped. The pressure hull is intact. There is no meltdown. There is no fission product release into the Atlantic. There is no second Chernobyl. Preminin has done what he set out to do. He has saved the submarine, the crew, and everyone in the shipping lanes downwind. He is 20 years old. K2-19 floats on the surface for 3 more days. Both reactors are shut down. The submarine runs on battery power. Toxic fumes fill the forward compartments. On October 4, the crew is evacuated to the Soviet commercial freighter Krasnogvardeysk. Captain Bertanov remains aboard with a skeleton crew, trying to repair systems and establish a tow. On October 6, as a Soviet tug attempts to secure a line, the tow rope breaks. The submarine begins to sink. Bertanov orders the remaining crew to abandon ship. He is the last man off. K2-19 descends stern first into the Atlantic. The wreck settles upright on the Hatteras abyssal plain at approximately 6,000 meters depth, over 18,000 feet. The hull is intact. Both reactors are shut down. The control rods are fully inserted. There is no radiation leak. The submarine carries 34 nuclear warheads, 2 pressurized water reactors, and Sergei Preminin's body in Compartment 7. 4 men died in total. 3 in the initial explosion, and Preminin. The Soviet Navy classifies the loss as an accident caused by seal failure in Missile Silo 6. The cause of the seal failure is disputed. The United States denies any collision. The reactor shutdown is credited to Belikov and Preminin. In 1987, the Soviet Union posthumously awards Sergei Preminin the Order of the Red Star. The citation credits him with preventing a reactor meltdown under extreme conditions. His family receives the medal in a closed ceremony. The Soviet Navy does not publicize the details of K2-19's loss. The accident is classified. Western intelligence agencies learn of the sinking through acoustic monitoring and satellite observation. The full story of Preminin's manual insertion of the control rods does not become public until after the Soviet Union collapses. In 1997, 10 years after the initial award and 6 years after the Soviet Union dissolved, the Russian Federation upgrades Preminin's honor. He is awarded Hero of the Russian Federation, Medal number 409. The ceremony is public. The citation reads, "For courage and heroism in preventing a nuclear catastrophe." His name is released. His story is told in Russian newspapers and television. Preminin becomes a national figure. Streets in his native region are renamed. A school is named after him. The Russian Navy commissions an anti-sabotage boat, P-429, in his honor. His sacrifice is no longer secret. In Preminin's native village of Skornyakovo in Pskov Oblast, a marble plaque is mounted on the wall of the local community center. The inscription reads, "To Russian seaman Sergei Preminin, who has saved the world from a nuclear catastrophe." The language is deliberate, not the submarine or the crew, but the world. The plaque reflects the Soviet and later Russian understanding of what was at stake. A reactor meltdown at sea, months after Chernobyl, with international shipping lanes downwind and Cold War tensions still high. The plaque remains in place today. Preminin is buried in the Knyazhaya Guba Naval Cemetery near Godsievo. The K-219 accident drives immediate changes in Soviet and later Russian submarine reactor design. Reactor compartments are retrofitted with pressure equalization valves to prevent hatches from sealing due to differential pressure. Backup manual control rod insertion tools are now stored inside the reactor compartment, not in adjacent spaces. Emergency oxygen supplies are increased. Reactor scram drills are expanded to include manual insertion scenarios at elevated temperature. Crews practice the procedure Preminin executed under fire. These changes are incorporated into the Project 667 modernization program and applied to newer classes, including the Delta IV and Beret ballistic missile submarines. Had the fourth control rod remained unseated, K-219's second reactor would have achieved criticality within minutes. The coolant system was already compromised. Core temperature would have exceeded 1,200 degrees Celsius. The zircaloy fuel cladding would have failed, releasing fission products into the pressure hull. Steam pressure would have ruptured the hull. The submarine would have sunk with 119 crew and dispersed cesium-137, strontium-90, and plutonium across the Atlantic. The contamination plume would have entered the Gulf Stream, reaching the U.S. eastern seaboard and European coastlines within weeks. NATO would have detected the radiation. The geopolitical consequences in October 1986, months after Chernobyl and in the middle of the Cold War, are incalculable. None of this happened because Preminin turned the fourth crank 110 times and seated the rod. In the years following the Soviet Union's collapse, NATO and United States Coast Guard officials privately discuss recognizing Preminin. The Gold Life-Saving Medal, the highest U.S. civilian honor for saving lives at sea, is considered. The rationale is clear. His actions prevented contamination of international waters and the U.S. eastern seaboard. The recognition is never formally awarded, in part because Cold War protocols discourage posthumous honors for foreign military personnel, and in part because the full details of the reactor crisis remain classified in Russian archives. Nonetheless, Preminin's name appears in U.S. naval intelligence assessments of the K-219 incident. His role is acknowledged, if not officially honored. On October 3, 1986, the world did not know how close it came. Western intelligence detected the explosion aboard K-219 through acoustic sensors in the Atlantic. Satellites tracked the submarine on the surface. The U.S. Navy monitored the Soviet evacuation and sinking. But the reactor crisis, 4 jammed control rods, 70 degrees Celsius, one 20-year-old sailor working alone, remained classified for over a decade. The public learned of Preminin's actions only in the late 1990s, after the Russian Federation declassified parts of the accident investigation. By then, Chernobyl had faded from daily headlines. The Cold War had ended. K-219 was a footnote. But for those who study reactor safety and submarine operations, Preminin's manual shutdown remains the textbook example of competence under fire, thermal physics as a constraint, and the human cost of preventing catastrophe. The fourth control rod stayed seated. The reactor stayed cold. The Atlantic stayed clean. Sergei Preminin is still in Compartment 7, 6,000 meters down, where he saved the world.